Hi, and welcome to episode number 59 of Basha's Thoughts. Sometimes taking a larger perspective is super helpful, and in these times of greater and greater polarization, this can be very helpful for any individual wanting to find greater peace. So, taking a larger perspective often involves taking a step back and looking from the outside, trying to encompass and see what it is that is actually going on, trying to understand the dynamics of something, and trying to fit that dynamics, that thing that we see, into a larger context. And that's how we often get the question why answered. Why is this happening? Instead of focusing on what is happening, we take a step back and we look from the larger perspective. This may be especially wise because often this is a strategy that is used by people wishing to accomplish things. Perhaps you've seen this picture of a king and his advisor standing in a fortress, in a castle, behind tall walls, and at the bottom, surrounding the castle, you see people furiously shouting and obviously being dissatisfied. And they're there with different weapons. And there's actually two kinds of weapons. And the king asks the advisor, "What shall we do?" And the advisor says, "Well, my king, I advise you to have them fight each other instead of fighting us, fighting you." This is actually a tactic that is often used whenever someone wishes to accomplish something. It is easier to distract someone else. You see it also as the look at the bird. You know the saying, "Oh, look at the bird," while I'm taking something away from you, while I'm doing something that I don't want you to focus on because you might not like what I'm actually doing and it's going to affect you. These are tactics that are often used and actually often used in our world. And so whenever we feel that for some reason we are getting really angry and upset about something, it may be worthwhile asking why. Take the step back, and instead of going into the what and the why of the what is going on? Well, this person just did this, and this is just so wrong because of this and because of that. Instead of being drawn into the subject matter, ask oneself, why am I feeling this? What was it that actually generated this? Where does it come from? What was it that triggered me? And where does that trigger actually come from? Is it the advisor up in the tower, in the castle, shouting out to the people, telling them what to get upset about? Telling them that the scoundrels with the torches are the ones who are the bad people? Shouting out controversial subjects so that we can fight amongst each others? See, this is a tactic that is often used. And to find out when it is used, we can actually apply it on ourselves. And often we can actually find what it is that it's all about. And when we get that broader perspective and are able to see what is actually happening, that perhaps we are just being pitted against another group so that we will be focusing on fighting internally while something much bigger and more important that will affect us all is going on. This is, of course, an ancient war tactic, but still as efficient now as the hundreds or thousands of years ago when it was written about. And learning to start doing just that. Start by asking, wait, why am I upset about this? What was it that triggered me? Where does that trigger come from? Who put that trigger there and why? Am I missing something else? Moving out into that picture actually helps us very much to stay more centered, because then we will not be drawn into the emotional reactions. We will be more responsive instead of reactive. We will be able to make choices. We will be able to see a wider perspective. And often, if we do find that we are actually just pitted against another group for the purpose of distraction from something else, well, then we will have the opportunity to actually look at what is going on and perhaps even in some way be able to affect it. It is a way of not identifying with the role that you have been put into, but actually taking a step outside of that role. It is also part of just moving deeper and deeper into who you actually are, letting go of all the different characters that you're playing, and becoming the actor, and then choosing if you wish to go into a particular character and play it. But you understand from the outside everything. You understand what is actually going on. And then you understand which characters it is interesting and worthwhile for you to play, which will be the most satisfying to you to play. We know that this type of warfare, you could call it, where you create an internal war, are going on in so many different ways and on so many different levels. You have countries that are creating groups and pages in social media, spreading information, and that information is meant for other countries and the population of those countries in order to create greater polarization. And when this is done, you start getting exactly that, pitting people against each other inside of a country. Why fight a whole country where you can just spread the right type of information and have the country fight itself internally? We have, I think I heard that last year there were 2 billion pages that were closed down by Facebook because they were just troll farms created for these types of purposes. So that is one, but there are many other ways in which this can happen and many other levels. And so anytime we do get upset, it might be worthwhile asking, wait, why? What was it that triggered me? Who put that trigger there? And why is it beneficial to put that trigger there? What am I not seeing? What is actually going on that I'm not seeing right now? So one context within which this is interesting to do is this context of kind of a game that is being played out and trying to ask, why am I reacting this? Was this actually done for a purpose? But another way of doing this is to go inside and ask why. What is underneath this? What is actually being threatened? Because if you react violently or strongly, probably there's something that is being threatened within you. And if you can focus on that, find that, then you can also liberate yourself from things in the end. That is also a worthwhile journey to go on. Trying to find the fear. What is it I am afraid of? What is it that is being threatened? What past trauma am I currently reliving? That is very often the case. We are just reliving a past trauma and putting it over a current situation, whether it is relevant or not. And in that way we get stuck. We get stuck in the past and always reliving that thing from the past. But understanding what it is, facing the fear, we may move past it and become free and present. When we are present, we are able to see all the beauty that is actually always surrounding us. But often we do not have access to it because we are not present, because we are paralyzed by judgments, fears. So there are two paths. One, if you are more into the world of drama, then you can become a better actor by asking the question why and trying to see, is there a purpose for trying to create this reaction in me? And then the other step, in general, in me, why does this reaction happen? What is it based on? What is my fear? Can I be free of it so that I am no longer able to be triggered by those things and by those games? And this second path is where things like bioenergetics become very useful, because they make it easier for us to find what the underlying structures may be, what the underlying traumas may be, and what the underlying fears probably are. But even if you don't know what character structures, bioenergetical character structures are strong within you, you can always just ask the question and try to go deeper. So take something that made you upset recently for some reason. First, just say it, what it was, the situation. Well, maybe it was a friend of yours, and when you most needed them, they just didn't answer their phone or their messages. And then the next question is, but why? What is the essence? What about that is it that upsets you? And here you might have different answers for different people, for instance. So it's important to go deeper and find, for you in particular, but what about that person not answering you made you so upset? What was the story that you were telling yourself was actually going on? In other words, what was the type of trauma that you were repeating in slightly different words? Maybe you find that in your case, maybe that person did not move out of their comfort zone, did not sacrifice their well-being for you, did not start running around and feeling bad and trying to do something until something was solved for you. And that feels bad. Okay, but why? Why does that feel bad? Maybe you feel that you're not worthy. Maybe that is actually the deep underlying fear that here is manifested. And in this situation, it signals that, hey, you might feel as though you're not worthy, and this is your greatest fear. This person not helping you in this way that you saw as a friend tells you, again, your basic trauma, you are not worthy of that help. And that is really bad for you to see, so you get upset. But then if you find your trauma and your fundamental fear, you can start moving past it. Because as you realize it, then you might realize, hey, I can see how that situation was all about my trauma. Probably wasn't even about the situation itself, because maybe later you find out that the person was maybe in an area where there was no phone reception and they were just not able to get the message, or maybe something completely different was going on in their life. And yet, your first reaction was to move to your trauma and put it on top of that as a lens through which you see. And so this might resolve your situation with your friend who did not do what you wanted them to do when you needed them, who were not able to answer you on the phone. And you can actually relax that completely when you see that it is your trauma. And then once you know that this is a trauma that perhaps comes up for you often, then that is something you can work with. Because if you release that, wow, then you become truly free. And if you understand that you are beyond all of that, you are not that person, that character, and you learn to be as being itself, then the triggers are no longer triggers for you. The fears are no longer relevant for you. It is the path of illumination in the end, but you don't have to get all the way to total illumination before you start feeling the immense benefits. So, taking a step back when we feel that something is wrong, when we feel that we're being triggered, stepping out of polarization and into a larger perspective where you can ask why. And you can ask why in terms of the situation. Who would want to trigger something like that? What is actually going on? And also asking, why am I in particular triggered by that? What inside me makes me responsive to these triggers? What fears are there? These are just some things that I've been thinking about these days. So I think this is it for today. And maybe I'll talk to you in another podcast episode. Take care.